Okay, excellent. So good morning and welcome. And so today is our final session of our CCRAF 2024 edition three-part webinar series. And of course, we will have another exciting topic to discuss today. For those of you who are new and those of you who may have forgotten, my name is Nikelia Greg-Wakarai. I am a technical specialist in soil and water with ICA's Agricultural Climate Action and Sustainability Program. And so with that program, we provide support to the ICA member states within the Caribbean region. And for those of you who may not be aware, ICA has offices in several of the CARICOM countries, from Belize, Suriname, Guyana, Trinidad, all the way up to the Bahamas. We also have Jamaica. We also have offices in Haiti. And so for our newcomers today, and for persons on there, of course, you could put your country, or you could simply just put your flag or write where you're from in the chat, just so we can get an idea where persons are from. To reduce on the distractions while the presenter is presenting, if you could keep your mic mute. I know sometimes it accidentally gets on mute, especially for persons on the phone, so just be a bit mindful for that. Please feel free to turn on your cameras, but I know sometimes the internet connections are not the best. It's always lovely to see the faces, especially when you're asking the question. It would be nice so we can have that, better interaction. You have the raise hand function when we reach the Q&A session. I know persons always want to review certain things, so the recording will be provided to you after. Also, the PowerPoint presentations for persons, there are certain information that you would like to extract from there. And from this QR code, you can get the links to all the CCRAF social media platforms. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we also have a website, we have a repository on Agri profiles. And so you can access all those materials there. So you don't necessarily need to wait on me to send you an email. You could always check on those various platforms for any updates, future events that we are having, and also for the recordings, the PowerPoints, and other materials, okay? And so with that, the key objective of the CCRAF is for us to raise awareness and to share knowledge. There is a lot happening in the Caribbean region, and sometimes we're not very aware of it, what is working. And so we want to use this platform to raise awareness, to share our experiences, share our knowledge as it relates not only to climate smart agricultural practices, but agricultural practices in general that have been working and making an impact in the region. We want to build a community of interested and engaged persons. It's always better to achieve a task when we work together and we are working towards a common goal. And that leads us to, we want to promote enhanced coordination, that we work together, we are on the same path, we have the same level of thinking and the direction. But very important for us under the CCRAF is not only the webinars and the sharing of the knowledge, but translating those knowledge to actual practical action on the ground, some of which we can directly address the challenges within the agricultural sector, such as improving your livelihood, addressing the impacts of climate change. And so with that today, of course, we will have with us Mr. Lynroy Scott, who will be presenting on the topic at hand today. And then followed, we'll have an open discussion. So any questions you have, please note them down. And we will have that nice open discussion with Mr. Scott after he has presented the general thematic area of the topic. And so today, Mr. Scott will look at a data-driven farm decision for enhancing productivity and livelihood. And so while I call on Mr. Scott to give a little background about himself and then delve into his presentation, I am going to share with you a poll. And so if you could take the time and just fill out the poll while we allow Mr. Scott to share his screen. So welcome again, everybody, and thank you for joining us. So Mr. Scott, it's all yours. You can go ahead and share your screen.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Sharing my screen.
So you should see the poll on your screen, and so you could just respond to the questions on there. Thank you very much. So you can go ahead in full screen, Lynroy. Okay, so you are in full screen. I'm not sure if you're speaking, Lynroy.
Yes, I'm in full screen, but I'm seeing the poll.
Yeah, you could close it on your end. Don't
Okay.
end, just press the X, yes.
All right. Okay, excellent. Good morning again, everyone. Yes, my name is Lynroy Scott. I am an agronomist. I have been for 28 years. I live in Jamaica. I've been working in agriculture during that time. I am primarily, I've always worked with crops. So my information and what I know, my competence is in crops. I've worked in the sugar industry in Jamaica for 12 years. And I went into a private business that does distribution for over another decade. This morning, I'll be talking to you about data-driven farm decisions for enhancing productivity and livelihoods. My background to this is that during my time in the sugar industry and even my current job, data has been a large part of what I do. I ran a meteorological met station for 5 years. I've been trained in GIS for about 17 years. So I have some background in that. And data has just been a part of what I do. I'm always collecting data, ran databases, manage a lot of information. And so it's has become pretty much a part of my life. I want to start this morning by opening with two proverbs. One of them a friend of mine sent me from the US. I'll just read them. Keep well informed of the condition of your flocks and pay attention to your herds. That was done by Solomon. And it speaks of the need to be aware and following or tracking in detail what it is that we handle or manage. And the faintest ink is better than the best memory. That's a Chinese proverb. And it speaks to keeping records because when it's important, our minds may not hold up or our memories may not hold up. All right, so let's go into the presentation. All right, so data-driven farm decisions for enhancing productivity and livelihoods, empowering farmers with information for better outcomes. And essentially, that's what we want this morning. Nikelia spoke about learning and applying what we have learned to practical information. It's not just, as she said, the seminars, but actually the process of using that information so that it enhances our lives. What is data-driven farming? And I'll speak to these definitions. It is a practice of using data collection, analysis, and interpretation to inform decision-making in agricultural operations. And the aim is to optimize productivity, sustainability, and profitability. The key principle here is using that information to make informed decisions. So we're using information to make informed decisions. And why does it matter? Why does data matter in farming? It improves tracking and decision making. Because if we're able to follow if we're able to follow what we're doing, we're able to make better decisions. It optimizes resource use and reduce costs. And I'll speak a bit more to these as we go along. There's better risk management. There's when we know what we're doing, we can lead to increase in yields and boosting our income. It enhances market access because once we know what's happening in the market, we're better able to go in. and interact with it correctly. It supports sustainable practices for the long term in terms of environmental management, etc. It facilitates access to financial services, and there is enhanced livelihood for better governance. And I'll just share an anecdote that I got, that the British Empire, actually, it was said that because of their strong administration and strong culture of record keeping, they were able to rule the world. This is an island in the North Atlantic that was once, they said that the sun never set on their empire because they kept good records. Let's do an overview here. I'll be handling 3 of these points. So from data to decisions, we're looking at gathering relevant data. We'll be looking at analyzing and interpreting the data for insights. And we'll be looking at decisions on or a course of action based on that analysis. And I'll show some examples. We won't speak much about we won't speak much about reviewing and acting on decisions by implementing them, but I will give examples of those. But one of the things we want to just start out simply, when we talk about data, data is just information. But when it is put together, it becomes useful, and it becomes useful information. And one of the first things we want to start with is just to observe. Simply observe. Let's make a note of what we see, what we hear, what we sense through our instruments, and to record those. So one of the things I want to emphasize is record keeping. And you'd hear me say that throughout the presentation. You must keep records. If we don't know what we're doing, then we won't be able to make references, won't be able to plan, won't be able to chart a course of action, won't be able to do anything, because all we'll be resting on is a faint memory or a strong memory. But it's better to have records to actually have concrete evidence to make decisions on. All right? Good. So let's speak about gathering or data collection. And on the next couple of slides, I'll be looking at these, and I'm just using these to point out areas of use. We'll be looking at some of these methods and what is important, particularly in crop farming, to ensure that we have an idea of the areas that we can begin to look into in how to use this data effectively and the tools that are available, and also how we capture them. So there are some key variables here. There's weather, that's familiar. There's soil health, there's water management, crop growth and health, pest and disease management, fertilizer management, harvest, post-harvest management. We don't think a lot about that in terms of data, but it's actually very important. Farm management, and by farm management, I'm talking about your day-to-day running, your operations, your labor costs, your expenses, those things in terms of your tractor usage, if you do use tractors, or your implements, those costs associated with just managing a farm, supervision, etc. Crop rotation and intercropping, that's important to know also, because you won't plant one crop right throughout there unless you're a monocrop. There's also market information, which is critical to what we're doing. And I put in controlled environment agriculture, meaning hydroponics and greenhouses, because they have a set of data associated with them, and it's important too in this context. I hope I'm not going too fast. Michaela, you could let me know.
This is good, thanks. Let me be
okay, yes. All right, now the next couple of slides are loaded with a lot of information, but I won't be going through them in detail. What I want for you is to see how the methods that are available for using this information or collecting this data, and how it can be used and what it can be used for. So the 12 variables I went through just now, I'm going to be going through them in this way, and we'll be looking at them to kind of get a better sense of how this data can be used. So for example, weather, soil, and water management data, we see there are traditional methods of collecting that data, It's a simple books, basic paper books that you need to write down information on. So you would have observed rainfall. In fact, where I started out was as an agronomist. My first job was to manage a weather station. And so for 5 years, twice per day, I had to go and collect rainfall data, evaporation data, wet and dry bulb thermometer, sunshine recording, and daily temperatures, which are very important. And we use that rainfall data to determine how to irrigate. That was used a lot in making decisions. And because it was an estate, the costs were significant. So whenever we had 2 inches of rainfall, for example, we would shut down irrigation and wait another 10 days. We would also go in field and measure those conditions to see if we could start back irrigation or not. And this was simply based on collecting weather and meteorological data. You see also how intermediate methods that can be used, digital thermometers, advanced methods. We use satellite data and analysis now. We have that available on the internet. It's accessible to us when we're predicting hurricanes, etc. For soil health, similar. There are a plethora of tools that are available, and we would want to have at least basic tools available to us to capture this data and to be able to use it effectively. Water management, a very similar thing, right? For crop growth and health, and I'll speak to this a little. This is very important because in growing a crop, you want to get as much information as you can about that crop in order to make an effective decision. Everybody wants a successful crop. So as a result, we would want to ensure that we make the time to actually understand what we're doing and to keep records to track. We can say, oh yes, the sweet potato did well last year, but why? How did we achieve it? Was it that I used more fertilizer? Was it that I used a set of pesticides that were effective? Was it that my water management was correct? And in doing this, we want to be able to track. So we want to make records. We want to keep records of what we're doing to follow through, to ensure that we know how we are actually producing and using that information to make good decisions. I'll just read across the slide on this one. And in terms of you want to make a visual assessment, for example, there are paper charts that you can actually use to look at your leaves to know if your nutrient levels are correct. For example, if you have interveinal chlorosis on your leaves, it could be an indication that your magnesium levels are off. It could indicate that your iron levels are off. You want to be tracking those things. You want to be able to making records of those things so that next time you'll be able to know how you should be able to handle this crop. They can also be they're chlorophyll meters. They are refractometers that we can use to check the sucrose levels or the sugar content in our both in our fruits and in our leaves to know what to do. You see a fancy word here, metabolomic analysis. It's actually a name for basically taking a snapshot of all of the biochemicals in a particular plant at a particular time. And these are high-level tools that are used to assess crop health. So things like these, pest and disease management, we also want to ensure that when collecting these, we want to make a record of disease presence or disease absence, and particularly during times of the year, because, for example, during the cooler months of the year, we may not have a problem with caterpillars, but in the warmer months, you may see an increase in caterpillar activity because there's much more food available, insects are multiplying. And those things are to be noted because it helps us to decide how to move forward. We use integrated pest management data collection, so we can look at various factors that help us to identify pest and disease, and we can track using spreadsheets. I'll point out something. When I was in bananas, there was something that they did. It was quite interesting. This was on the eastern part of Jamaica. What they did was we used to have a schedule of spraying bananas for black sigatoka. And what would happen is that during that time, it was observed that every time there was a rainfall, there was an increase in sigatoka. And we may say, yes, it's natural to see that because we know that fungi multiply during humid conditions and it's likely, but nobody actually ever recorded it. So one of the tasks I was given was to actually look back at the rainfall data and to track it against the leaf counts. So how they would know the presence, how they would track the presence of the sigatoka was to count the leaves, count the number of spots on the leaves over a sample area, and that would be recorded. But then they also kept rainfall data during that time. So what my responsibility was to check to see if there was an increase in rainfall over the time soon after we had, there was an increase in, sorry, there was, if check to see if there was an increase in fungi or sigatoka prevalence after rainfall periods. And that was put on a graph, we tracked it down, and actually there was a positive correlation. So every time it rained, there was an increase in sigatoka presence. So we were actually based on the tracking of that data, on the recording of that data and assessing of that data, we're actually able to make decisions that, okay, once it rains, there'll be an automatic spray because we know, or we have confirmed based on the data that we captured, that when there's an increase in rainfall, there's an increase in fungal activity. Similarly, for fertilizer management, and there are traditional methods, there are intermediate methods, there are advanced methods and tools, and for harvesting and post-harvest management, it goes similarly, right? So there are various methods of tracking this information. So we can just take a look at those. For farm management, crop rotation, market information, it's the same. For market information, I'll speak a little to that further down in the presentation, and I'll hope that it will be useful. For control environment, like I mentioned, I put it there because it's important, because they have a very specific set of arrangements, because it's indoor or under set conditions. But it's actually very critical for persons who do control environment agriculture to know exactly what is happening, because it's very easy to lose a crop if the variables are off. So this is just an overview of what we just did. So I want to speak about the record keeping, and I really want to emphasize that because that's where it all starts. If you have paper records, they can be computerized, they can be digitized and used later on, right? While we have more advanced methods like Internet of Things, sensor networks that are connected to the internet and data streams automatically go into computer hardware, the simple paper notebook, the simple paper notebook can be used to share this data, to interact with it, and to make decisions out of it. And so if you look at the screen, you'll see that there are a multiple of methods. It's not exhaustive. I just put this there so that we could stimulate our thinking into what we could actually do with this information and how we can capture them. All right, this is a sample of a soil test report. And I use a soil test report because I'm familiar with soil test. Let's look at the phosphorus levels here. This is on the right. We see that it's low. Now, a farmer getting this information becomes very useful to him, because in knowing what his phosphorus level is, he's able to make decisions about the crop. A low phosphorus level would indicate that you may have an unhealthy situation. Your yields may not be as high. Your flowering may not be as high, because phosphorus not only affects your roots, it also affects your flowering and ultimately your fruit set and your yields. So a low phosphorus, but if you don't know that you have low phosphorus, you wouldn't be able to make a decision to increase your phosphorus input, for example. And just to use it again as another example, if your phosphorus levels are low and you don't know, what it will mean is that your whole management system may be off. So you may have everything else right, but because your phosphorus is low, it impacts the way you produce and your capability as you go forward into the future. So making sure that we collect the data is very, very important. And a soil test may last you anywhere from a year, even up to 3 years, depending on how much your soil changes. But also you can do soil tests during the crop on multiple occasions. And I'll show you an example later, and use that to make decisions that are very beneficial. All right, we're going to change a little now and go into the analysis and interpretation. And I'm going to move through this pretty quickly. So when we get the information, we want to analyze it. After we've captured it, we've collected it, we want to analyze it and we want to interpret it. We want to know why it was collected. And that's very important. So that we know, once we know why, we're able to determine how the data will be used and how we can make it, how it will be used and how we can make it relevant to us. For example, if we do a soil test versus a SAP analysis, it will help us to determine, in terms of why, it helps us to determine the purpose of the data, why we actually did it, and how it will be useful to us. The context here, context affects everything. So when we're how and by whom was the data collected is very important. And that context can impact the interpretation. As the example I gave here was a novice or an agronomist who took the soil test. Who takes it impacts the quality of the data. Somebody who's a novice who doesn't know how many inches to go or how many samples to take or how to do a composite sample will affect how that field is actually interpreted. Because in a field, you may have different soil types. And if that is not if a composite doesn't represent the field, then we could have challenges there in terms of the data. The quality again is important. Is the data complete? Is everything inside of there accurate? Is it biased? Is it reliable? We can look at all those things in terms of exploring the data. And I've made up a chart here to just walk us through this. But one of the first things we want to do, we want to organize and clean the data. And by cleaning the data, what I mean is that we essentially go in and remove those variables or ensure the things that are where the outliers or information that is not useful or relevant to what is needed. I want to explore and hypothesize. I want to have some questions. I want to have some idea of what does this mean? What should I be looking at? Is it that if I increase my phosphorus, I will see an increase in my yields? Is it that if I get 2 inches of rain, should I turn off irrigation? Those kind of questions you want to have in your mind as you go along. Then you want to analyze and visualize information. When I say analyze and visualize, you begin to question it. You begin to look at it. But you first want to put it in a form that it becomes useful. So you can look at it, for example, put it on a spreadsheet, put it on a graph, look for trends, look for patterns in the data that makes it useful. How often does rain fall? Do I have 3 rain days per month? Do I have rainy seasons? Do I have additional sun at a particular point of the year? What are my water levels like? Do I live beside a river? How does this flow? Is it affected by rainfall? Very kind of things that we want to analyze the data, but want to visualize it. And in visualizing it, we actually are able to make a lot more sense out of it. And after we have done that, we interpret it and we generate insights. And those insights now will inform our decisions, and it will help us to make better decisions. Data-driven decisions. And here I'm going to be walking you through some examples of how of how the data has actually been used. And these are stories about persons I know of or I've worked with in terms of how this data was actually used. So this is Omar Fullerton. He's a 30-year-old farmer in Jamaica, and he has a 0.8 hectare farm, 2 acres of watermelon. And he actually used data to achieve a successful crop. And how he did it was he consulted what was called the Jamaica Agricultural Marketing Information System, which is a marketing information tool that is used delivers prices every week. That they actually go into the markets. They go farm gate prices, the market prices, they do urban prices, and actually track the price of products over a long period of time during the year. And this has been going on for over a decade. And so what he did was he tracked the price data for watermelon over a 3-year period, and he found out that from December to March, the price of watermelon actually goes up. So during February, it started to peak. So what he did, and I'm sure what he did was to actually, I'm showing the information here that this is the chart that is used to track the prices in Jamaica. This is the Jamie system. What he did was to actually track the price over that period of time, and he was able to realize that, hey, the price is 3 times higher than what it normally is during the in season of the crop. And if you look at the chart here, I've done an enlargement of it. It's $264 per kg. This is Jamaican dollars. That works out to about 170 US per kg, right? Based on the exchange rate. And the normal price is about 88 Jamaican dollars, or about 56 cents per kg. And that's what he did. He looked at the price and then he made some decisions after 3 years. So because there was a peak demand in February, usually it's a winter tourist season. So persons are here. There's a demand for watermelon, strong demand for watermelon during that time. But the supply is low. And one of the reasons why the supply is low is that farmers refrain from planting watermelon because it's not the natural season for watermelon. Those are vine crops, and they prefer sunnier times. They prefer warmer temperatures. But the challenge is that downy mildew, which is a pathogenic fungi, actually affects the crop. So it's difficult to grow. And also the lower temperatures, because of the lower temperatures, the plant doesn't thrive as well. So he factored these in, and he actually engaged an agronomist to help him to deal with these challenges. And the plan is planting so that come February peak, when he harvested, he would achieve the price that we saw here, that high price. And the outcome was very good for him. Actually, it was this year that he actually did it. And he planted in December. And when in February, but before the bulk of other farmers brought in a crop, he was able to successfully harvest, earning 3 times the in-season price because he tracked the data for a 3-year period and made good decisions based on that, and he supported that decision with expert advice. And there's another outcome here. I'll look at it. Modern agriculture. I changed the name of the farm because I don't want to identify the entity, but it is a real entity. They reduced their, yes, sorry about that. Yes, they did it's a commercial entity. It's the entity is about 179 hectares, but in onions they only planted 81 hectares, and this was staggered over a period of time. So they didn't plant all 200 acres one time or 81 hectares one time. They did it they staggered it over a period. But one of the decisions that they made was before they planted anything, they did a pre-soil test to know what the levels were, and that informed the quantity of fertilizers that they would have used or put on the crop. And that's smart. That's just very smart to use that information because you want to know what is available to you, what you need to purchase, what you don't need to purchase in order to make a decision on the crop. And so by doing this pre-plant analysis, they were able to determine that, hey, we need X amount of fertilizer to run this crop. But what they did after was 3 weeks, 21 days after the onions were germinated, they did another soil test. And mid-season, around 50 days, onion takes between 90 to 100 and 110 days, depending on the varieties, to come to maturity. So what they did, they followed up on that test mid-season. And what they were able to do, the result of it was that they reduced fertilizer usage by 15%. Now, for an entity as large as that, that is significant. They achieved significant cost savings, and there was no reduction in their crop yields. So even though they use less fertilizer, there was no reduction in their yields. And so we see an optimization of input use based on actual soil needs. So it had both economic impact and environmental impact because of a good data-driven decision. This same entity, they had a group of consultants working with them in their entity. This is an actual satellite image of the farm. It's near an urban area, but it's actually still in agriculture. And what they did was they used a signal, they used a variable, a satellite variable called a normalized difference vegetation index, or NDVI, by remote sensing, actually capture what was happening on the ground. If you see this red area here, the colors go from green to red. Where it's red, it's very dry, and it indicates crop stress. Where it's green and nice, the colors actually tell you what's going on. So you know that here is healthy, vegetation is healthy, irrigation is likely healthy, and you may have less issues here. It's not you'll be able to confirm it on the ground. But this kind of tool they actually use to give indication as to what to do. And this is something I'll speak a little bit about further because it's one of those things that has future use. And it's an advanced tool, but it saves time and it saves money. And this one that was being used actually a subscription model, and it's not very costly on a per acre basis. So we see it. I'm winding down now. So we see data-driven decisions enhancing productivity just from the examples we gave. In terms of the efficient use of resources, we see increased profitability through cost reduction and yield improvements. We see data-driven decisions impacting the environment. So reduce excess input use in case of the fertilizer that was reduced. We see adaptability. The farmer who made that decision to plant in December, even though the challenges were there, because he understood what the risks were, he was able to make a good decision and he profited from it. And also, importantly, data-driven decisions improving livelihoods. So persons are able to he was able to access better market prices through correct timing. We saw there was a reduced cost through efficiency. And there's also informed diversification. And I'll speak to this because farms are usually family businesses. Usually it's not just one person. Usually the family is involved. And so making correct decisions or using correct data impacts the household. It affects how we plan, it affects how we budget. And that data use also impacts how family members interact with it. That data the use of that data, for example, women are affected differently by circumstances in terms of farm economics, etc., than men. And when you are able to know or able to respond to that correctly, it helps because you know what to do and to respond to that as circumstances or situations change. Right. Now there are some challenges, and I'll speak to this briefly in data-driven farming. And we want to look at those. So there are resource constraints, there's data privacy, and there are supportive policies that can be used. So in terms of dealing with resource constraints, there are low-tech solutions. I already spoke about a simple notebook to collect data. There are training programs that could be implemented. There's gender-sensitive support, as I indicated. Women are affected different than men in terms of circumstances and the arrangement and how society interacts. There are data privacy issues. And one of the things that is becoming more important now, and if you notice, sometimes when you go on a website, you have to click if you want to allow cookies, etc. That's because data is collected on you. Every time you move that mouse, something is registered in some database somewhere. So there has to be a pointing out of clear ownership. There has to be clear ownership policies. There has to be security measures if you're going to be collecting data. And I'm going to go back to this point a little later because of what I'm going to share after. There has to be robust security measures, and we can and we should be informing or seeking to inform farmers on data rights. There can be supportive policies. This is probably at the government level or the NGO. Rural digital infrastructure, such as internet, Wi-Fi being made available on a broad scale, incentives for tech adoption that can be funded both privately and publicly, and in public-private sector partnerships, etc. There has to be equitable access to data and technology. All right, let's speak about business opportunities in data-driven farming. And this is not a comprehensive list, but it does give some pointers as to where one could begin to look if one is interested in using data as a business or providing data to the agricultural sector as a business. So there's the agricultural marketing information system. I gave an example of that in the terms of the GMS that the farmer used earlier with the watermelon. That's one such thing. Farm record keeping services, and I think this is a real need. Having interacted with thousands of farmers, I do find that they don't keep very good records. They do things from memory a lot. Most of the persons who I know don't actually keep proper records. Some of the best farmers I know don't keep very good records. And I think it could be an area that they could get some help with. And that's one opportunity. There's data-driven crop consulting services. This is something I do, and it actually works. And when you're able to bring information to a farmer that tells him why he should make this decision, it helps him to understand and to move his business forward. There's crop performance prediction service, yield forecasting, plant optimization service using historical and real-time data. And this has already been used in other parts of the world. I don't know if it's currently um, being used in a significant way, but there are entities that use yield forecasting in terms of crop predictions. For example, I know of sugar, banana, large scale citrus, they will actually use that. But for small farmers, I don't know if that service being available. Crop monitoring, and I showed you the images earlier using the NDVI and remote sensing for small farmers. This is actually a really good opportunity right here, because a lot of the data that is given by these services or satellite companies, what they do is very large in context. So you have very large, like square kilometers of area. When a farmer has 0.01 of a hectare to manage, that data is not captured. But you do have services that go very granular and offer this. So it is an area that is worthy of exploring. Tailored farm management software. And I consider this also context, because some farms, for example, an onion farmer may have a different set of considerations from a rice farmer. So you want to be able to use data or tailored solutions to handle that. And that's also used as app development. Some are already available. We can look at developing some of those. I know once there was some funding in the Caribbean for app development for agriculture, and an app was actually launched, I know, but it's no longer in use. So there's still an opportunity there. Center networks and data analysis to monitor and predict coastal soil cell interchanges. The Israelis have done a very good job in terms of developing sensors for this. The Volcan Institute, I think, have done some work in this area. AI-powered pest and disease detection. And this is being explored now, and it's also an opportunity. Machine learning for early identification of crop threats using image recognition. And also, this is another very good area for use. If somebody has the time and the opportunity, you could actually begin collecting data on various crop threats. Some of their apps already on the internet and on Google App Store that can be used, but this one is also another opportunity that we could use to look at. Smart irrigation systems for water conservation, spoke to that already. Data-driven chain supply optimization, precision agriculture drone services. And so this could actually complement satellite imagery if somebody actually has the resources to handle this. They could actually consider using this multispectral imagery at a granular level that farmers could use to make decisions on a very small acreage or large acreage for that matter. But it's more contextualized. Crop Smart crop selection tools, SAS, and that is software as a service that recommends optimal crop yields based or optimal crops based on data analysis of changing climate patterns. Very important here, because we're in a region that's affected by climate change. We're experiencing increasing temperatures, sea temperatures, land temperatures. We are a hurricane risk zone, so it's very important for us to consider some of these options. So we could actually make recommendations, because if temperatures change, we may need to look at other crops. If we have rising seas, we may need to look at changing some things. Farm to table traceability solutions, and this is blockchain. Now, blockchain is essentially a distributed database across many computers that's very reliable to track information about. So once you begin to input that information, you're able to trace data, you're able to trace farm goods, and you could offer that as a service to farmers so that they can have credibility in the market. And that's a very important thing right now. And this is not exactly farming, but a precision home gardening apps. They're very, 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 they're useful opportunity to engage and to use data to help gardeners with their products or with their gardens. There are some resources. I just listed these. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just some of what I used to put together this presentation. So I'm just sharing back some of it with you. You can have a look at it at the end of the presentation. The presentation will be shared, so these are available, and there's more that can be explored. Right, so just to recap, if we capture good data, it leads to better decisions. And better decisions lead to improved productivity and livelihoods. And I would encourage you that whatever level you're at or whatever scale you're at, to utilize data if you are not yet already, and if you are, you can improve, to utilize data to make better farming decisions. I hope this was useful. I hope you're able to understand me. I know I went a little fast, but I'm hoping it was a useful information. Thank you very much.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Lynroy, for this. We do have some questions already. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, persons will encourage you to raise your hand and ask your questions directly. So I'm seeing one hand is up. Carib, go ahead.
Hi, good morning. How you doing, Mr. Lynroy? Did I
Lynroy.
say Leroy? Okay.
Yes,
Hi, nice to
Lynroy.
meet you.
Yes.
I really like the presentation. For me, my focus is Guyana. And speaking of data, one of the biggest challenge that I've experienced is just being online and trying to find some type of soil, up-to-date soil report. And I think like the information that I saw was like 1960 something. It was like a back in the day. And I think when I was asking one of the extension officers, like, why doesn't Guyana have, up-to-date information available online? I don't know. Would you happen to have the answer to that question? That's question number one. And number two, I find that a lot of the farmers use sprinkler and drip, irrigation. And if, let's say, if the farmers were to get introduced to, organic farming, is it really, because I hear different things where they say that it's going to take a lot of convincing, you have to really, really market the product to the farmer. But is it one of those things where if one farmer in a particular region sees that the product works, the product will just sell itself? So those are my two questions.
Okay, let me answer the first one. I'll try to answer the first one. I know that the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, has done some soil work in the region. There may be data available at UWI regards to the soils in Guyana. However, I don't know how up to date that is. So you could check with the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, for soil data on Guyana. There might be some information there.
Can you say, you said is the what? Is the University of?
Yeah, University of the West Indies, St. Augustine. That's in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay.
Right. There was a lot of work done in the region by Professor Nazir Ahmad, yeah, some years ago.
You said Professor Nazir?
Ahmad. Yeah, he's now deceased, but a lot of work was done in the region. So Guyana may be one of those territories that work was done in. And you could check with universities to see if there's anything there.
Okay.
Right. In terms of if let me try to understand the question that you're asking in terms of if farmers use a particular technology for irrigation, if there'll be wide scale adoption. That's what you're asking. Oh, she froze. Oh. Already?
We
I'm
can't
not
hear you.
hearing. Oh, you're not
Yeah.
hearing me? Oh, you're
Yeah,
not
but
hearing
go
me?
ahead. I could hear you now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Right. Okay. Sorry about that. Right. You wanted to find out if farmers see a particular type of irrigation being used, if there'll be wide scale adoption of it.
No, so let's say, like, a lot of the farmers, they have their ways of farming, right? Which was
I think we're losing Carib there.
Okay.
Yeah, what I will do, I will message so she could type in the chat. I think she's having some internet issues.
Right.
I saw in the chat,
In their minds.
Carib, you are breaking up. I think you have some internet connection issues.
Oh,
If you
can
could
you hear me
try
now?
one more time, or if not, type it in the chat. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. No, she's frozen again.
Yes. Okay.
Yep. So what we will do, we'll take another question. There was a question in the chat, and of course, persons, please, if you have any questions, if you have any comment, Corey, you may have to type in the chat because we keep losing you.
Okay, all right, I'll type it.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. So while Corey is typing her question, unfortunately, we do get internet issues all over the place. And Robert Tulash, if you're with us, would you want to ask your question directly? And I see you would have messaged in the chat.
No, you can just read those messages which was in the chat.
Okay, so Robert, I'm not sure specific to what component of the presentation you're asking, but he's asking, Lynroy, regarding your pre-soil test, was the soil test done 4 weeks apart? Also, how many soil tests was done for the 16 weeks of the onion? If you have that information.
Right, yes. For the onion, it was 3 tests were done. There was one that was done just prior to planting. There was one that was done 21 days after germination, and one other one done about day 50.
Okay. Okay,
right.
Great. Okay, thanks.
So the pre-plant testing was done to determine what was the overall for the crop. But as the tests were done, we were able to, because it was drip irrigation, or I should have made that information. It was done by drip irrigation. So because it's done by drip irrigation, the plants are fertilized weekly. So modifications were being made to match what was in the soil, because the test was revealing that okay, the nitrogen was more than adequate, so we could actually reduce our nitrogen input, and overall fertilizer usage went down.
Okay, excellent. For Corey, I see Dane has posted in the chat, Guyana Land and Surveys is a good place to check for data on soil. So you could check with Land and Surveys in Guyana as well. Vishal, I saw you had a question in the chat. Would you like to ask your question directly? Okay, so I'll just read Vishal's question. So Vishal is indicating that data collection may work on small scale farming, but if you operate on large scale, data collection is a challenge simply because of lack of specialized labor. Often the owners who work full time on crop, there is no time to do data collection on every factors. Soil test is very important before you start with new crop, but soil test laboratory often give between 3 to 5 month data of your soil. And this is also a challenge because if you send soil sample in rainy season, you get results in dry season, and this impact your decision making. And so that person visually is asking, how can we deal with all these challenges?
Right. So there are, for large scale entities, actually I find that it's actually easier to collect data on large scale entities because the resources are available. And what's available now in the world that we live in, there's sensor information that can be had. So a lot of the variables that we can actually measure using sensors, we can use remote sensing, we can use Internet of Things sensors that are actual instruments that you put in the soil or put on the farm, and a service provider can actually capture your data and make it useful to you. And this is a subscription service that can be paid by a large entity. So that's an easy way to handle that data constraint.
Okay, great.
Yes.
We have Ariel Robert. Would you like to ask your question? Are you with us, Ariel?
Hi.
Yes, go ahead, Ariel.
I was just asking regarding the support services that you discussed. What would be the appropriate degree or certificate course that somebody would need to be able to provide crop consulting services or crop performance prediction services?
Okay, again, it would be contextualized. So if you ideally you'd need some sort of a training in agriculture or agronomy, so that you'd understand the basics of crop needs in order to give this kind of a consultation. But I'm aware of persons who have never been trained in agriculture, when I say never been trained, not formally trained, but have taken the time to do short courses online, to educate themselves, to do work in the field, and to offer that as a service. And they have become very proficient at it. So it depends on where you are, but if you're going to offer yourselves in any sort of professional capacity, I would recommend that you at least get some sort of degree development, where you can go into details in it. So an associate, a technical degree, or some form of formal training in it would be useful, but it's not limited to that, because as I indicated, there are persons I know who have never been formally, when I say formally, meaning they don't have a degree, but they have over the years honed that craft of making their business to understand plants and to learn how to grow them and to develop those skill sets so that they can offer real good, valuable advice to farmers based on the data that they're able to capture. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it did. Thanks so much.
Yes, yes.
Lovely.
Good evening. Greetings again. Tell you.
Yes, Robert, go ahead.
Yeah. Follow up to, I did not really think I was 100% satisfied with the answer. Because pertaining to the onion now and the testing which was done, because what I'm looking at 21 days, the roots have not yet been fully developed. So the fertilizer which was applied would still be there even after the 21. The residual effect is there. So even on another soil test will show that residual effect. It will show that fertilizer is still there, which has not been utilized as yet. So that other test which will be done now will show that. And so probably that is the reason he did not have to apply any more fertilizer, because that fertilizer is still there, not being utilized.
Okay. Well, Robert, while we could argue on the methodology, what we want to emphasize is that he used, prior to that particular crop, there was just there was a soil test and a recommendation was followed throughout the crop. And the farmer spent X, or the entity spent X. Subsequent to that, when they did 3 soil tests, they recognized that they did not need to use as much fertilizer as in previous years. They made a decision based on the facts that were available to them. And that's what we want to emphasize, that they made a decision based on data collection. No, you may be right. I'm not saying you're wrong. You may be right. But you also, if you were to do the similar thing, what we're saying is that you would take those tests to determine if you need to buy less fertilizer or buy less fertilizer or buy more fertilizer, depending on the data that you collect. So that's what we want to emphasize, not the actual. We don't want to get into the agronomy of it right now. What we want to emphasize is that they use that data to make a decision, and it saved them 15%.
Okay, so what was the yield per acre?
All right. They got close to 40,000 pounds per acre.
And also, what was the previous year?
No, I don't have all of the history. And remember, what we want to emphasize. Remember, Robert, we're focusing on using data make decisions. That's what we're focusing on.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
So what we can probably do in that case in terms of the company, if there is a way to
Yes, sir.
access some of that information so we can really get into the whole historical part of it, we could try to do that, Robert.
Yes, sir.
Right, but the focus is really to get an idea of, you know, the use of data to make decisions. So we didn't actually go into the full details to give you all the information, but we will work on trying to access that and whether you could probably contact them directly to get, because some of companies don't put out all the data for the public. So if that is a possibility. Corey, do you want to try again to ask your question? I didn't see you type it in there.
No, the question is there, but overall, what I was just saying is that since a lot of the farmers, I'm going to try and talk fast. Since a lot of the farmers in Guyana have their own old methodologies of like methods of farming, if a new organic product was introduced, is it going to take a lot of marketing to have the farmers, you know, to sort of convince the farmers to sort of transition? Because from what I keep hearing, I hear that it's very difficult for farmers to adapt to a new way of switching from one product to another product. You guys hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Very good.
I'm going to put on my marketing hat to answer this question. Usually, if you want to raise the influence of a product, it's ideal to work with model farmers. So farmers who have influence in a community, whom other farmers look to, for example. And if it works with them, you will get some level of adoption. And you can also support that with advertising.
You said modern farmers?
Yeah, model farmers. Farmers. So those model farmers, yeah. Farmers that have influence and are respected as good farmers in their communities, right? I hope that helps. Right.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks for that. We have Alexander hands on, and of course, before persons you leave, we have some announcements we would like to make at the end. If you could stay on. So Alexander Taylor, go ahead.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you,
Yes, I could hear you and I could see you as well. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Lynroy Scott, I'm from the Bahamas. I would like to say thank you for sharing all that information. It's very educational, and some of the things that we could use that you spoke about, we could actually apply here in the Bahamas. What I noticed in the Caribbean, we're not utilizing the information or research that other Caribbean countries have. If we as farmers, I'm a beekeeper here in the beautiful Bahamas, if we partner with some of the other Caribbean brothers and sisters are doing in those islands, it would put a lot of our islands ahead. So I'd just like to say thank you again.
You're welcome. And you are right. And actually, I'd want to comment on that, that the University of the West Indies and some of our colleges have a lot of data sitting down on their shelves in the universities and in their libraries that's available for use. I remember some years ago, research was done on rearing tilapia in the Caribbean Sea, and very useful information. And let's use that as an example. And as far as I know, I do not know of anyone who is actually doing it, but that's just one example. I sat with a professor who was a dean in one of the departments, and he shared with me his lament because he was retiring, that all of this data, all this research is just sitting on my shelves and nobody's using it. So our colleges, our educational libraries are places where a lot of information can be had.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. And of course, this is why we have the CCRAF to assist with those gaps. And I know we do have a lot of people in the audience that have access, that are even part of research. And of course, we will be happy if you reach out to us. We have while we do have the AgriProfiles repository, there is still a lot of information out there. And so this is where we are working in the CCRAF to bridge that gap so we can share the knowledge from across the region. And of course, we cannot do it all. And that's where we need the support, the coordination, the collaboration, all of us within the region. And so I'm happy, Alexander and the team there, that this information is useful to you. And we will be planning other sessions for persons interested in various topics and how to access various information that is more context specific in the region. So with that, thank you very much. I will take Warren, and then after I'll take some of the questions in the chat.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
Oh man, I really appreciate that presentation from Mr. Scott. It was timely, it was good. And I think the reality is that in the Caribbean, I should say, that we do not really make use of much data in our work that we do. And I'm the training manager for NARI. And it's a soaring issue indeed, because we have a lot of research that was done at our institute and we do not make use of data. And data will help us to actually not just decision making alone, but improve what we're doing. And I think this presentation today would have really brought out a serious problem that we need to have more collaboration across the Caribbean. First of all, I think the first level is to raise awareness and educate our practitioners so that we can able to, make use of the data, all the data that we have sitting to improve what we're doing. We are talking about Vision 25 by 2025, but how much are we utilizing data, to really achieve all of this? So I just want to make those comments today.
Yeah, thank you, Warren.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much, Warren. And of course, please do reach out to us. We could have some further discussion on that, how we can engage a lot of the institutions like NARI. I know NARI does quite a bit of work in Guyana. And I know persons tend to talk about access to information and all of that. And so we can definitely have a conversation. Just send us an email and then we can work out some discussion around that. Thank you so much. I will take one question in the chat. Unless Jean Maslier, if you want to ask the question, is there a relationship between cropping techniques and soil structure and methods combating pests?
Could you repeat that question, Kelia?
Is there a relationship between cropping techniques and soil structures and methods of combating pests or dealing with pests?
Okay, it's a complex question. Is there a method between
is there a relationship?
Relationship between soil structure, cropping techniques, and combating pests? Yes. There is likely a relationship. I don't know how much soil structure affects well, it will affect pests, because let's kind of compartmentalize it. We're talking about soil structure. We're talking about particle size. We're talking about organic matter. We're talking about whether it's clay, sand, silt, etc. We're talking about impact on drainage. So, for example, if you have a poor drainage soil, you will likely retain moisture longer. So you likely may have fungal pathogens are able to thrive better or over a longer period of time in soil. So in that case, using that example, soil structure can affect this soil pests, as it were, soil diseases, because a sand, for example, a sandy soil is more free draining, it's more aerated, so you may have less of an impact. And that's just assuming that those pests or diseases are there. You may have some soils may have an affinity for nematodes, or nematodes may have an affinity for certain soil types. So there could be some correlation, but I don't know, I can't say conclusively based on the question that it is so. So I think we need to look at the research to see what it is saying. I know, Nikila, you're a specialist in soil. You could probably assist me on this one. Yes.
Yeah, of course,
yes.
definitely.
Yeah.
There are correlations. Of course, depends on your techniques you use. your management, your in terms of even, how you go about cleaning your farm. Of course, there are correlations, but of course, you would need to look at the farm specific context to give some more direct responses to that. But of course, yes, with your soil, how you manage your soil, how you manage your farm, there are relationships in terms of the prevalence of pests as well as diseases. But of course, you would need to have a specific farm visit to see the conditions of that farm and give a more direct response there. So now we'll take Ashley and Hemant.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Lynroy, for your presentation. It really was insightful and a good reminder too for ourselves, my husband and myself, that we are taking things in the right direction and we need to keep going on this path because it's what is needed between being able to make processes efficient and trying to combat climate change at the same time. Because what we do actually, and this is a bit to touch on, I think somebody asked earlier, what type of background you would have to get into consultancy in these types of areas. And my background is actually chemistry. My husband was in statistics. But we came together and we decided to go into agriculture and we looked at it from a research perspective first and foremost. So we actually looked into multiple crops and tried to develop specific systems in a way that we could integrate them together along for intercropping and different block type systems to say that we could manage both with climate change in terms of flooding and drought and in terms of dealing with pest management and minimize waste, very little fertilizer usage. So these are things that you could do, and yeah, you don't really have to have a particular background. It really is about how you approach the research that's out there. Now, I do want to, I guess, put it out there because there are lots of people here, many people in different areas. What I feel like we need is more information directed to the farmers as to how to access these bits of information, where they are, and also a bit of background information as to how to go about using the information, how to actually start to take the data and understand what it means and how to apply that into what they're doing on their farms.
Yes, I really appreciate your comments, Ashley. They're very, very useful. And I think it's something that we could look into, Michaela, at exploring further.
Yes, definitely. And that's why we always send out, those questions, and we request those feedback from persons on what sort of information would be of relevance to them. As I mentioned, we may not be able to, present on every topic at hand, but of course we do have them logged in and we try our best to get presenters, practical persons, just like Lynroy himself, to come and speak to you on some of these things. If there are trainings in the various ICA countries or with our various partners, we try to share those. So of course, please share with us your areas, you have your challenges, your areas of interest, and we'll add it to our list and see how throughout the years, how we can assist in providing those sorts of information to you. And so thank you for that. Ashley, I have actually noted down the area that you feel you require some more information than how to access some of those information. Thank you. I will now take Bernard. Welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you and good morning. Mr. Scott, excellent presentation. Really enjoyed it. I have a question relating to the struggles of the small farmer throughout the region, myself included. Over the past year or so, I've been searching for simple or any type of app or program that would simplify data capture on the farm. One of the struggles, especially here in Dominica and some of the other Windward Islands is people struggle on a daily basis when you have this input into the farm to capture it and then to basically synthesize it in a manner that if you want to go to an institution to get some funding or whatever other support you need, to have it in a ready format. But I have not had the opportunity to come up with one so I'm wondering if you have any specific recommendations that we can begin to look at and so test out in our conditions.
It's interesting that you asked that, because I myself have explored trying to find apps, already built apps for data capture on the farm. And most of them are tailored to large scale enterprises. And you just speak about tractors and just general, that's somehow not contextualized to our local or our small island state region. I haven't found any that actually is tailored itself. But what I would suggest is that you begin to capture your own data in notebooks on a spreadsheet. You could categorize it like I listed there: weather, soil data, crop health, marketing information, and you begin to put that down. And whatever funding agency that you interact with, you'll be able to put that information together. And in the meantime, what we could do is, and that's that, I'm encouraging this audience is to explore developing an app that would be useful for our region. Because there are some things that for example, I'm using just Jamaica as an example. We have many microclimates, many. So we're not just a country that's in the Caribbean, in the tropics at 17 degrees latitude. No, it actually, there are many microclimates. Our temperatures will go as low as 10 degrees in the cooler months, and as high as 38 in some parts of the country. And that changes the dynamics of how we regard weather data. So those are things we consider. The soils in the Eastern Caribbean, they are volcanic soils, and in the northern there you have calcareous soils. In Ghana you have bauxitic soils. So there are many variables to capture in our region. So if you could find somebody who is interested in developing this, or you could probably start an initiative, maybe you, not yourself, but somebody a young person who is interested in developing, and you give them the context to help you to make something that's useful for you. Michaela, I'm sure you have some comments on this. Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
If we could probably have Richard. Richard, are you there with us? I know there is an app that the office in Trinidad would have developed. We would have had a presentation on that last year. I don't know if you want to give a few words on that, Richard.
Hi, Nikhil. Okay, thanks for the opportunity. Let me also take the moment to congratulate Mr. Lynroy on an excellent presentation. So in Trinidad and Tobago, unfortunately, the app we developed is geo-fenced for Trinidad and Tobago because it was specifically designed to capture traceability aspects in line with the good agricultural practices standard that was developed for the country. So in keeping with the record-keeping aspect of the app for the on-farm production aspects, it was also part of a traceability system, not using blockchain, but a very simple way of collecting information in keeping with the GAP standard, and also a cost of production spreadsheet. So what it does is that any information that you put into the cost of input, supplies, labor, pesticides, etc., it would have been and you tie that in with your harvest and your yields, etc., it would automatically generate a cost of production per unit for that specific crop. And you could put multiple crops. It's tailored so that you can actually allocate designated areas in the plot so that you will be able to generate specific unique identifiers for a plot number within an acreage, so that you can trace those batches in a traceability system. As I said, it's an app that we have here. There are some modifications to be done to the app, but anybody outside of Trinidad and Tobago will not be able to access the app. What I could suggest is that if Nikilia has that presentation, she could probably share it again on the chat for those who may want that information to see if it is that is relevant to them. I know a lot of countries have asked for it in the Caribbean region, but we are still working on opening up that app to the entire region, which has taken a little longer than expected due to some financial limitations. So thank you very much, Nikilia.
Thank you very much, Richard. So as I mentioned before, our social media pages, our website, you can access all past sessions. I have just put in the link that was speaking to the FarmView app and some other agriculture app by another presenter. So for persons interested, you can look at it. And for persons in Trinidad, you can definitely look for the FarmView app on both Android and iPhone. I think it's available for both in Trinidad. And so, of course, the office is definitely working towards trying to have that available for the rest of the region. And of course, if we have partners out there that are willing to partner with us to get that app out there, we welcome that, and we welcome you contacting us for further discussions. So now I will take Deandra.
Yes, good morning. How are you? My name is Deandra DeVoe. I am a plant and soil sciences lecturer in the Bahamas. Excellent presentation, Mr. Scott. I'm currently lecturing my students on the importance of crop record keeping as it relates to really connecting variables such as soil bulk density to irrigation management, nutrient management as it relates to your need to know more about soil textural analysis, etc. But essentially what I wanted to know, part one of my question was already answered in the chat, if this specific presentation will be available, because I would love to use this as supplemental data for that course. But do you guys have any pre-published spreadsheets available for dissemination, maybe by use of, for the use of extension officers? Because locally, I do know we don't really have an extensive data bank regarding the basic requirements of soil management. Again, when we talk about soil bulk density, as it relates to the potential of compaction, soil textural analysis, or even soil pH as it relates to fertilizer management and irrigation management. We don't really have a broad data bank that has this baseline data available. So is there potentially any pre-published spreadsheets just so extension officers can maybe disseminate these spreadsheets to local farmers so that we can, from a governmental standpoint, encourage these farmers to be more present as it relates to crop record keeping, and maybe at the end of each season, you collect these records or make it a requirement to submit so that we can improve on our data bank locally. So again, my question is just about, do you have any pre-published spreadsheets, whether it's from a marketing standpoint, soil management, irrigation management, just the daily record keeping requirements for the local farmer to assist with this data collection?
Nikilia?
Okay, thanks, Deandra. Under the link, which I would have shared with the GCF project, we do have some sample sheets available in terms of data collection. I know a lot of the Ministry of Agriculture Extension Services do have, because they do go out and take records on the various farms. So I have some of my colleagues on who can provide me support there, as I am multitasking quite a bit right now. So we have Dr. Chanis and Martin on, who can give us a little bit in terms of the GCF. We also have Richard on, who can also, we did have a PISLM project that have some of that. So if they could just jump in and give me a little support there to speak on those things while I multitask in the background. Thank you. Okay, so in terms of the GCF, you could check the link. I can also share that via email when I'm sending the updated email. We also had a PISLM project that looked at that, and also persons can always contact their extension service unit to see what sort of templates they use and what are some of the key data that they collect from the various farms. But I will also share some of what ICA has been supporting the ministries across the region with in some of my update emails, okay? Right, so I will share that via email with persons. And of course, if you require any further information, just please share with me an email. I will share the email of the CCRAF. It is ccraf@ica.int. And so if you require any specific information, just let me know, and then I could find and ask around for those specific information. And so Conrad, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Very good presentation, Mr. Scott, and thanks, ECO, for arranging this training. Now, I've been involved with several projects, coordinating projects, and every time we do a project, I'm from St. Kitts Nevis, by the way, St. Kitts and Nevis. Every time we do a project, we have to do baseline data collection. There's a dearth of information, and it's repetitive. So information is sort of disconnected. One project collects data, another project collects data. At the end of the project, the data, for some reason, are not available across the board to practitioners or the persons who are considering implementing projects for the benefit of farm and the country. Farmers don't like to keep record. We've tried many different approaches to field school training and a lot of training like this. How do we break that cycle to get small farmers? We're small farmers, less than 5 acres, mostly 3 acres, and sometimes even less than 8. How do you break that cycle to convince farmers that it really is to their advantage to spend some time to collect records, and then have a system of collecting those records from the farmers, as a previous speaker has suggested, whether it's done, whatever frequency it's done, so that a database can be maintained and accessible, so that it's not repetitive every time you're doing a study. The before project and after project data collection. And how do you sustain that data collection over? Any ideas? Because Scott, you've done an excellent presentation. Nikhila, you're involved in this. How do we break that cycle of get farmers motivated, and then get the extension officers really into collating that data and having that data in a data bank in the country that can be used by the farmers themselves, by other agencies that are designing projects for the benefit of the farmer and the country? That's my question.
All right, I'll try to attempt at answering the first part about how do we change, how do we start this process with farmers. I think an important thing is to change attitudes, and that a forum such as this will help to initiate that. But also it needs a broad-based approach in terms of education and informing farmers so that they can see. It's important for them to perceive the value of capturing data. If that hurdle is not made, then we will always have a challenge. So we have to find ways of causing farmers to perceive the value of capturing data. And it was a hope this morning. That's why I started out with those 2 proverbs. You need to know the state of your flocks, and also the faintest ink or pen is better than the best memory, in the hope that it would stimulate that kind of motivation to begin to start collecting data. In terms of the broad scale aspect of it now, I'm going to hand over to Nikhila for that one.
Yes, Conrad, definitely you would have mentioned that challenge. Of course, you do have a lot of institutions, you do have a lot of persons. When a lot of projects that come in, you collect a lot of this baseline data, and then now there is not that communication among the entities to collate those information and make it available. Unfortunately, with myself being involved in projects, sometimes based on the donors, sometimes there are clauses that you cannot share that information. I think very important is the influence of the ministries of agriculture to come together and find a way, because the Ministry of Agriculture is the key institution that serves the farmers. And I believe it's not really sustainable and feasible that, a project is what is implemented to have a data system installed. I think that there is a key responsibility for the ministry. And I know for sure the Dominica Ministry of Agriculture is developing a database for that. So I think also important that persons should reach out to the ministries of agriculture to find out what is available. I know sometimes we say it's not available. We go on Google and we just say it's not available. But it's important to go beyond Google, go to speak to the extension officers, go to speak to the Ministry of Agriculture, find out what is there. In terms of the projects and collating, I think a lot have to do with, I think we have been trying that a lot with ICA, because we do work a lot with the other organizations, the other institutions, the other partners. But again, if you do a data system, there is a cost to it, there is a management to it. And so before you even go into that, you need to train persons, and ICA has been providing that sort of training, because you need the persons available, you need the persons trained as to how to collect that data, what type of data to collect, how to filter through it, how to store it, how to interpret it. And I think that is very important before we even go about setting up those systems. I know it's required, but it is a step-by-step process that will seem very long for us. But ICA has been quite instrumental in supporting the offices in that regard. Even under the GCF project, if you go on the link, you will see those things available. We did do some mapping of projects, platforms, data collection, and so you could go on that link and see some of that information that is there. You had another question, Corey?
Real quick. I just want to be very clear. So because I'm a very determined person, and I did contact the Ministry of Agriculture, and it was a no-go. Like called, emailed. I'm just keeping it 100. I got nowhere, nobody. So I kind of had to ask a lot of questions and contact different extension officers. But I do feel like it is important, if the Ministry of Agriculture wants to encourage people to get involved in agriculture all over the world, to invest in their countries. I mean, these are things that are important. Mr. Lynroy Scott, do you have a number or a contact that I can contact you?
Yes,
Okay.
I could.
Can you share
Nikela,
that?
is it okay to give it out, or I should just route it through you?
Yeah, if it's okay with you to share with the public, that's quite fine. And if you want, when I send the update email, I could share it also. That is quite fine.
Yes, okay. I'll prefer to do that when you do that. So I'll send my contact information via the email that Nikela will send out.
Okay,
excellent.
And do you guys have is there like a social media group, like some type of WhatsApp group that maybe I can join, for people that are interested in agriculture or anything like that?
At this point, the CCRAF, we do not have a WhatsApp group. What we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have LinkedIn, we have a website, we have the Agri Profiles repository where we upload those information to make them accessible, and where you can view, instead of waiting for me to send you an email, you could just go on there and you could see what's coming up. In terms of the WhatsApp group, we have not quite gone into that. Persons have recommended, as you would be well aware. I would have to manage that as well. And so it would take a lot. And so it's something that we are thinking of. Of course, we can get some feedback from you, the participants. And so, of course, we could look at starting a chat, but we would look at the details for the CCRAF, so that outside of these webinars, outside of any of the knowledge to action initiatives, we can keep in constant communication. And coming towards the end is one of the things we want persons to propose to us, a name that you can call yourself as a avid follower or avid member of the CCRAF. My colleague said CCRAFians. If somebody has a better name that they would like to propose for persons that continuously, part of the CCRAF family, if you could come up with a name, But definitely Carib, it is something we have been thinking of, and that is something we'll definitely put into the works, especially next year. We'll be celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the CCRAF. And as I said, we're looking to build a community, and what is the best way to do that is to have a platform where we can communicate more regularly with persons. Of course, I do have some more announcements coming up, but let us take the rest of the questions and then we will go into them. Thank you so much, Carib. Yes, Robert? Are you there with us, Robert? You had another question? Okay, so if Robert is back, we will take him. So in the
I'm out in the field.
Okay.
I'm out in the field doing some work in the meantime because as a fruit tree crop specialist, I coordinate out here training persons how to prune mangoes currently.
Okay.
I heard where someone mentioned pertaining to data and the farmers not having they're not getting the data. But I'm saying how I have data on my farmers on a regular basis because I have a lot of data on my farmers. How I do that, every time we're having the farmers meetings, because we have a monthly meeting with the farmers. What we do is every month when the farmers come to their meeting, they have to present their data. Because we purchase those record books and give it to them. So every month when they came, they have to present what they have done for the week, what they have done on their farm, inputs what they have purchased. So they have that. And then when that book is completed, we will take that from them, hand them a new one. So we have that. So that is some of the method we use to have data on our farmers.
Yeah, that's
a very
good method, Robert. Excellent method. And is it that after you all take the data from this book, do you convert it into an electronic version? Or you all are not at that stage yet?
Currently, we have not reached there yet, but currently we are asking our IT department to do that.
Okay, that's excellent. Is there any way we could get a copy to see what sort of data is collected in that book so other persons could use that as a possible template, or probably how they can purchase that book?
Probably via email I could scan and send it to you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Robert. So I hope persons are listening of the simple ways you could, as Lynroy would have been mentioned, and as Robert is currently practicing, how you can access some of that information. And so we will take, of course, we also welcome persons sharing their experiences in terms of data, how you go about being consistent in recording your data. I know sometimes we start and then, we find it's a lot of work, we get tired, so then we stop, and then probably an opportunity comes up and then we try and start again. So let us know for persons who have been successfully recording their farm data, using it to make decisions. We would want to also hear from your experiences. So Shamara, you could go ahead.
Hi, good day, everyone. So I don't have a question. What I want to refer to is the question before that was asked about the data. So as a farmer data collector, working in the Ministry of Agriculture, getting farmers to collecting their data on a regular basis or to continue collecting data. I think the issue there is that the outcome of the data is not being shared with the farmers after. So I think that's kind of discouraging to them. So what I think is, even collecting the data, I think the farmers should know what was the outcome of the data. What they should be given initiatives to say, okay, when you collect this data, how is it going to help you, and probably some initiatives should be given so that they, it could be of an encouragement to them to continue collecting the data. So overall, what I want to say is that giving them back a feedback on what is the outcome of the data, so they could know how to move ahead, not just collecting the data and then putting it on a shelf or keeping it locked up in a device. That won't really motivate the farmers to collect data or to share the data with the ministry so it can be distributed among everybody. So that's my contribution.
Thanks very much, Shamara. Of course, we know that farmers tend to be very busy. They have to do the marketing, they have to do the planting, they have to do almost everything. And as Lynroy, and he will come back in again, mentioned, it is a business opportunity. As we are speaking, this is a gap that for farmers to record the data for them to be able to make decisions. So, why not persons? There is the opportunity for somebody to, create a business in that, and then you say, for sort of this is your fee. You go, you take the records for the farmer, and you give them there is a fee attached to it. And you could, if you're doing a group of farmers, you do your field visits, you take the records, you do the electronic version, you help them, and that is a business that can also be developed from it, rather than we trying to find even sometimes the impossible way of getting the farmers to the record, because some farmers will just not record anything for you because some persons may not be able to do it, one. Some persons just don't like to do it. Some persons don't have the time to do it. And so, again, this is a business opportunity for someone or some persons within the various countries across the region to provide that sort of service to the farmers for a fee. And you can generate some income from that while addressing this data challenge that we have. And even you could become that data hub where maybe organizations would have to pay you to provide them that sort of data that you have collected over the years. Lynroy, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
No, I'm very much in agreement. I think Shamara could use the opportunity to actually start. Well, I can only suggest some sort of enterprise in data collection. And I do appreciate the point that she made about giving feedback to the farmers, because I think that is an important step. Very, very important point.
As with everything, even with the CCRAF, very important for us is providing you with feedback after the sessions and keep you engaged to let you know, what are the outcomes of these things, what are the changes, what are the improvements we are making. And so with farmers and with anything in life, feedback is also important to make decisions. And so thanks for that. We have Kathy.
Hi, morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Kathy.
Yeah. So I've worked both in a quasi NGO organization as well as in the private sector. And a lot of the comments that have been made before are so true in terms of farmers don't like to collect data. They don't have time. Sometimes they think it's a bit tedious to be collecting the data, and the connection between what you collect and showing them the results of how we've used the data to make informed decisions. Sometimes that connect is not there. I've worked in the private sector as well with a company, and this may be a little bit more self-serving for the company, where the company gather the data from the farmers, use their products, and then show them how they could increase their profits, their yields by using some of the products. So some of the private companies do have data that they would collect in terms of soil analysis, rainfall data, crop phenology data, pest management data, all those sort of data, but it may be a little skewed in the sense that it's used for marketing purposes for the company. But there's data out there. As someone mentioned, if we could get some sort of cohesion with getting all this information together, it would be so useful. one of the things that Lynroy mentioned about accessing a lot of information at the universities, UWI. I haven't recently looked on the UWI website in terms of looking for data, but well, when I was a student and did postgrad, that was a long time ago. Yeah, I mean, you had to go in physically and you had to have a UWI ID. So, Lynroy, is there, can a lot of these articles be accessed online? Do you know if a lot of it is digitalized so that you can access it online as well?
As far as I know, UWI still has a policy where you have to make contact with the university. But there are arrangements. For example, I can speak to the UWI University, Mona, and RADA. They do have some sort of agreement where they can share information, so it can be accessed to government agencies. So that's one way that we could look at it. I myself, in trying to get data, and I think Conrad actually touched on it. We do have a lot of data silos, and you mentioned it, Kathy, around in all our territories. So there is actually data that's collected, but it's just locked down on somebody's computer in an office, and nobody gets it. I remember trying to get data, rainfall, weather data for the past 50 years from our own Met Office. And it took them about 2 years to respond to an email. And I had to say, I'm a student. I really need this information to do my research. And eventually somebody replied. There's also, there may have to be payment options. So accessing this data is an effort in itself. And I know maybe a body like ICA or CCRAF would probably look at how we could actually get our universities, or government bodies, or private sector institutions who are willing to participate in some sort of a data hub or central data distribution system, whether for costs or free. I mean, preferably for free, but sometimes data does require data collection is time consuming and costly. So it may not necessarily be for free. But in terms of the University of the West Indies, I know they have some level of access. In terms of the last time I checked the website, there was some indication of publications. And if you search actually Google Scholar, you may find some stuff on it. But generally, I think you have to make contact with the university in order to get deep into their data, because a lot of those are printed documents and they were never digitized. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Lynroy. And as you're speaking, I mean, it kind of excites me a little bit because I like online research and putting together data. And so maybe that may be an area where maybe if we see where the gaps are and where the information is required, I totally can empathize with your requesting weather data from the Met Office. Yes, I have been through that, and yes, it's been a struggle. But even their website is not updated in a timely manner. So you need data for last month, and they have it like 2 months ago. But in terms of, like, as you mentioned, the information silos, if we could figure out where we want data for, it would be an interesting project to be able to get the information from all the different entities, put together that data, and because you would need somebody or something, a group to put together that information to make it available. Maybe the entities themselves may not be in a position, have the resources or have the time to put together the information, but perhaps, some funded project can do something like that to put the data together.
Thanks for that, Kathy. And so while we are on that, in terms of access to information, ICA is actually working on having one consolidated site where you can have access to various repositories that they have started working on. So they have been reaching out to various institutions, ministries of agriculture, especially within the Caribbean region, to have their repositories linked to that. So once you go on that ICA setup repository, you could access all different repositories within the Caribbean, Latin American region, instead of trying to search them one at a time. And so this is a project that ICA is working on. It is actually a session I am hoping that we can have for the CCRAF with my colleagues that are working on that system next year as we celebrate the 10th anniversary of the CCRAF. I will reach out to him again to get a status update on where they are with it. And I can always share some interim information with persons on here. Okay. So we'll take Michael and then we'll take Richard. Go ahead, Michael. Okay, so we lost Michael and we lost Richard. So I'm guessing their hands were up. Yes, Michael, go ahead. If you're speaking, you're muted, Michael. Are you there with us? Okay, I think we lost Michael. So if we do not have any more questions, I just have a few updates before I say my thank yous and follow-ups. So update number one, that brings us to the end of our three-part webinar series, and we had 3 really engaging sessions, and definitely I do hope. Okay, Michael, you there? You want to unmute your mic? I'm not sure what's going on with Michael. So Michael, if you have a question, if you could type it in the chat because we don't seem to be getting through to you. And so as I would have mentioned earlier, and as you would have seen on the flyers, as your participation within the session, we will be providing, as we would have done over the years, a certificate of participation for persons who would have attended 2 or more of this session. And so I will need some time to evaluate the 3 sessions and see persons that would have participated to then put together all of the certificates. So certificate of participation, persons who attend 2 or more of these sessions. We have some great news that, of course, as I would have mentioned, if persons could come up with a name as a part of the family of the CCRAF long-term participant.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, Michael, I could hear you now. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I've been having little technical problems.
I realize. Go ahead.
My contribution is merely, I must explain that I work with the Ministry of Agriculture and Grader for over 35 years. And data to farmers doesn't seem to be so important because the ministry themselves does not show the interest in the data they collect. Whenever you ask somebody in the ministry for data and data facts, they can't find the data. For whatever reason at all, you can't find the data. The only time data is being applied to farming is if you go to the commercial bank for a loan and you could present some good data, it may do well for you. But we have a problem in the region with data collection and the implementation. Because if you show a child that how important something is by your own attitude or so forth, it would really mean a lot to them. So when we collect data from farmers, I work with FAO, I work with CADI, UNDP, name it, in collecting data from farmers. And for whatever reason, we tend to not, and some people mention that, not going back and show them what we use the data for and how it would benefit them. So we tend to be over the years doing the same thing over and over and over. And to me, even me myself, I've been involved in collecting data for organization. And when I send the data for them on my farm, because I do some farming myself, I presently work with a private company, GCNA, the Grader Cooperative Nutmeg Association. But I am a farmer myself, farming 4 acres with different types of vegetables. And I voluntarily collected data for organizations and who never really get back to me and show me, you know, what they analyze from the data, including soil tests and so forth. So we have that problem in the region of people collecting data for us. So farmers over the years become sensitive about data collection now. I recently tried to collect some data for some farmers after the hurricane. And I could tell you, man, I met some serious challenges from farmers giving you data, even if you're going to benefit them. So we need to have a more modern way of dealing with data collection using GPS and so forth. It's a good thing, but to get the real information from the farmer belly itself might be a little bit more difficult for us now, based on what had happened in the past. And remember, our farmers, I don't know for the other countries, our farmers are aging in the true sense, because the farmers who really produce or who have the large acres are aged farmers, and they're not so interested in technology in terms of email and WhatsApp and so forth. We can't send them these messages, they're ready to respond. So I don't know how we would plan. We have to find some strategy to deal with the farming community so that data collection could be easier. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Michael. I was actually an extension officer within the Ministry of Agriculture in Dominica. And over the years, you always hear the issue with data. We do have a lot of persons who have been part of the ministries, who are farmers, and so let me pose that to you. What do you think are some of the solutions? I think now we need to find some of the solutions. We know the problem, we know the data problem. Some persons don't want to record the data. Some persons have the data, they're not sharing the data. Based on your experiences, based on your engagements, can you just email me some of the solutions? Go ahead, Michael.
Right. What I think we need to do now is to work with a pilot, young farmers, collect the data and make use of it. Let the public see what data can do, because we can do that quite easily now that there are some young farmers who are very interested and innovative. We can use pilot farmers in most of these countries and collect the data and show them how data could be important.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. And of course, that is a recommendation there, of course, with the youth are the future. If you teach the children from young, it's easier to adopt and continue with those good practices. But you have to consistently speak it to them, train them, visit them, provide feedback. And so persons who have had the experience, I know persons, certain things that have probably worked for you, if you could, we're running out of time. So if persons could, send me an email of some of the things you have done in terms of data, some of the things that has worked, how you got motivated to record your data. If you could share some of those things, and we can probably compile something nicely. And with the CCRAF, as we continue our planning, we see how we integrate those things and support persons out there and how we can address some of the issues, and even how we engage with the Ministry of Agriculture to even provide them some support in terms of those areas, and also the farmers. So I would welcome that for persons who can share with us those sorts of information.
Can you please put your email, Ms. Naklelia?
Yes, it's ccraf@ica.int. I'm going to put it again. So it's basically the email you normally get from the CCRAF. So you could just send an email to that. It's ccraf@iica.int. You can find it on our website. You could find our email on the website, the Facebook, on the social media. Just search for this Caribbean Climate Responsive Agriculture Forum, and you can contact us directly there. Okay. Right. So thank you so much, everyone. And so we do have some announcements. Again, the challenge is out there. Do you want to be called a CCRAFian, or do you have a better name that you would like to be called? So I'm putting out the challenge for our CCRAF family, persons who are long-standing participants. If you can propose a name for persons and yourself. My colleague said CCRAFians. If you like it, you can go with CCRAFians. If you have something better and more catchy and you want to be called and termed like that, send me something. This year, the CCRAF will be attending the Caribbean Week of Agriculture, which will be held in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm getting that CCRAFians is nice. So we have a thumbs up already. And But I'm sure there is something more punchline out there. As soon as you hear that, you're like, wow, what is this? I want to be part of that. Okay, so I'm waiting for some proposals. So the Caribbean Week of Agriculture in St. Vincent from October 7th to October 11th. And so the CCRAF has been approved some funding for that. And so two persons, long-standing members, soon will have the name proposed from everyone out there that will be able to attend, that the CCRAF will fully support to attend. And so we will look at one person, and of course we'll look at one of the criteria is one of the persons that would have been the most consistent participant. So far from 2021 to now, we have had 21 CCRAF sessions. And so we will evaluate all these 21 session participants, and the person who has attended the most will have the opportunity to attend CCRAF, the Caribbean Week of Agriculture, sorry. And so, of course, there are terms and conditions. The person would be willing to sit on a panel discussion, do interviews, as it relates to the Caribbean Week of Agriculture and the CCRAF, and give some testimonials as to how they felt about and how the CCRAF has impacted them. We will also, of course, we have to speak of our presenters. They are a very important component of our sessions. And so we will be also fully funding a presenter. Of course, that person will be, again, willing to sit on a panel discussion. And of course, that person will be selected based on the panel discussion that is being done at the CCRAF that is aligned with the area of expertise. And so that is for the CCRAF, Caribbean Week of Agriculture. And so we will be also looking at additional long-term persons, but this one will be more focused on a farmer, where we'll try and provide, or a technical person where we'll provide some form of its incentive to support their ongoing initiative as it relates to either adapting to climate change, improving their farm operations, to improve their financial income on the farm. Right. And then going forward, we'll be celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the CCRAF. And so what we would like to do is launch our CCRAF ambassadors. And so as we were mentioning, we're talking about model farmers. We want our model CCRAFians to help us engage persons of the importance of sharing knowledge and translating those knowledge to action in the region. And so we will be launching our CCRAFian ambassadorship as well. We will also be launching our CCRAF website. I have been sharing, but we have not officially launched it. We recently developed our website so that persons can more easily access the information. I know at the beginning, for persons who would have been there since the beginning, we would have been sharing by email, and it was quite difficult to get the information to you. And so we have, for you to access that, we have developed several platforms. We know everybody don't have social media like Facebook. So we have Agri profiles where anybody can access. We have the website where anybody can access. So nobody can say, I was not able to access. You have my emails. You can also email us and you will get the information. And so with that, I'm not sure if I am forgetting anything, but I will also send an update email. One last thing, we will be also launching, as I would have been mentioning over the years, we have been working to increase in terms of that fourth component, that fourth objective, translating knowledge to action. And so at the CWA, we'll be launching our on the ground, CCRAF on the ground or CCRAF on the road initiative. And so we are hoping that from next year, we can have, while we have all these webinars, we can come in country and be there, interact with you, have those hands-on, like for example, we have in this data session where we can go to one of the countries and have some of the templates, and go through the process of how to record data, how to interpret data. And so we are working quite diligently to access a bit more funds to be able to come in country and have those on the ground initiatives. And so for CCRAFians, and I'm looking for the name, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we welcome you to join us. We will be having session at the sessions will be held at the open campus, the UE open campus in St. Vincent, and so we welcome you to join us. I would love to meet some of you in person, and so I'm putting in the link of the Caribbean Week of Agriculture, and you can go on there, register to attend. Okay, and so those are some of the news. I will send some follow-up emails as it relates to all of this. The recording, the PowerPoint of this session will also be shared, but please check on our website and so on as we do upload them eventually where you can access them at ease. And so with that, Mr. Scott, thank you so much today for such an insightful, I know data can always be a challenging topic. It's challenging, and you know, for us to make decisions, for us to access funds, it's a very, very, very important aspect. It's not just, you know, about soil, about water, but having the data is very, very important. And so, folks, please share with me an email of what you would propose you would like to be called as an avid member of the CCRAF, and I will provide you all with any update. Lynroy, I don't know if you have any last words you would like to say before we close off.
Yeah, I'm really just grateful for the opportunity to have been able to share, and I'm hoping that out of this, we would all have made a step in the right direction. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Nikhila.
Thank you so much, and
Yes.
thank you everyone. And I do wish you all end of a productive week. Okay, and thank you. And I will keep you posted. Thanks. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.